Joining our discussion now is George F. Will, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for The Washington Post and an MSNBC political analyst. And George, you have heard your share of presidential tapes. This one now takes its place in history. What are you hearing when you listen to this tape tonight?
Well, I'm hearing redundant evidence that Mr. Trump is a seedy man whose incontinent sexual appetites get him into trouble with seedy women. Now, this is not news at this point in his presidency. I'm not hearing anything remotely like, you refer to earlier tapes, the tape in which Richard Nixon says, well, let's get the CIA to lean on the FBI to cover up a criminal conspiracy. In the one case, Donald Trump was a private citizen when that tape was made. Richard Nixon was president of the United States. I'm also hearing something else on the part of people analyzing this, and that is an attempt to turn all of this into a campaign finance violation. We really do not want, Lawrence, to go down the road where we say anything that happens that can be helpful to an ongoing political campaign should be monetized and counted as a contribution and therefore contribute to the criminalization of American politics. I think that's a terrible way to go. There are lots of ways of judging Donald Trump without getting into that swamp.
And the tape tonight comes on a day that the president began by tweeting, "Tariffs are great." These are tariffs that have already begun to separate him from some of his support in the agricultural states, which were crucial to his electoral college win. That day ends with this tape of the presidential candidate, Donald Trump, who needs the affection of those voters who are now suffering under his tariffs more than he's ever needed it before.
Yeah, this is just another day in paradise. We have this wonderful scene here. You know, we conservatives have a theory that government often is the disease for which it pretends to be the cure. The day begins with Mr. Trump saying, I'm going to take 12 billion taxpayer dollars to pay off the agricultural community for the injuries I've done them in keeping a promise I made to them that helped them vote for me. I mean, he promised to wage a trade war that would cause them all the trouble they're now having because they can't sell their beef and their pork and their soybeans. It's almost a relief at the end of the day from that absurdity to be talking about this other absurdity.
The connection of a politician to his or her voters is something that has always been considered precious and delicate. We are seeing a kind of cement holding the Trump base support, which is a minority support of this candidate. But at some point, does an accumulation of these tapes, this is one of what might be 12 of these tapes, that we will be treated to over the next who knows what period of time. At some point, is there an erosion that would occur in the president's support of people who have withstood every other thing that the president has put them through?
Well, that's the question. The super glue that adheres Trump's supporters to him is one of the scientific wonders of our age. Now, when you have a farmer talking to the Financial Times in Iowa, looking out at his field of soybeans, saying 1 in 3 of those rows is supposed to go to China, and they can't go to China, well, that's one test. And another test is, again, at the end of the day, we have good, decent Americans listening to not John Quincy Adams and Lincoln and Roosevelt and Eisenhower, but listening to this lowlife from Queens talking about paying off his lowlives from Playboy magazine. I mean, I think there does come a point at which the American people will say enough. See, I don't think, Lawrence, that the American people, by and large, are angry. I think they're deeply embarrassed, and I think they're sad about what has come to the country. And I think at the end of the day, embarrassment and sadness are more explosive than anger.
And that is certainly what we're seeing in the polls, which are overwhelmingly negative for the president in the majority of the country, certainly not with his Republican support. George Will, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be with you.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.